High in the mountains of the ancient land of Solara, where clouds sat on the peaks like fluffy white hats and the wind sang through the pine trees all day long, there lived a boy named Emilio. He was 10 years old, small for his age, with messy brown hair, muddy boots that were always 2 sizes too big for him, and the brightest pair of eyes anyone in the village had ever seen, eyes the color of a clear summer sky just after rain. Emilio had one great love in all the world: kites. Not just any kites. He made them himself, from bamboo sticks and colored paper, from scraps of silk he found in his grandmother's basket, from bits of string he saved up over months and months. His room was a forest of kites. They hung from the ceiling, leaned against every wall, and piled up in corners like cheerful, papery mountains. There were kites shaped like birds, kites shaped like fish, kites shaped like shooting stars, and one extremely strange kite shaped like a boiled potato, which Emilio had made when he was 7 and loved dearly even though everyone else agreed it was quite ugly. But his very favorite kite, the one he flew every single day without fail, was the golden kite. He had made it 3 years ago from a piece of shimmering golden paper he had found tucked inside an old wooden chest in his grandmother's attic. The paper was unlike anything he had ever touched, warm to the fingers even on cold days, and when the sun hit it just right, it threw spinning patterns of gold light all across the walls. He had cut it carefully into the shape of a long-tailed star, attached 4 bamboo spines, and tied on a tail of bright red ribbon. When he flew it, the golden kite did not just soar, it danced. It twisted and dipped and swooped as if it had a mind of its own, as if it were truly alive. The village children said the kite was magic. Emilio's mother said it was just good craftsmanship. His grandmother, old Nana Rosa, who knew more things than anyone, simply smiled and said nothing at all. Every afternoon, after school and chores, Emilio climbed to his favorite spot, a wide flat rock at the top of the hill above the village, where the wind was always strong and the view stretched forever. He would unwind his string and let the golden kite climb into the enormous sky, and he would stand there in happy silence, watching it catch the light far above him. It was on one such golden afternoon in the middle of autumn, with orange leaves skittering across the rocks and the wind carrying the smell of wood smoke from the village chimneys below, that everything changed. He was guiding the kite in slow circles when he heard, from somewhere above the clouds, a sound he had never heard before. It was not the wind. It was not a bird. It was a deep, rumbling, echoing sound, like a very large animal clearing its throat. Then 2 things happened at once. The clouds parted, and something enormous, shining, and absolutely impossible came tumbling out of them and landed, with a tremendous whomp, right in the meadow below his rock. Emilio stared. It was a dragon. A real, actual, honest-to-goodness dragon, about the size of a hay cart, with emerald green scales that shimmered like a beetle's wing, 2 great folded wings like a bat's, a long graceful neck, and a tail that curled 3 times around itself. Its eyes were enormous and amber-colored, like lanterns filled with warm honey light. And right now those enormous eyes were looking directly at Emilio. There was a very long silence. The dragon sneezed. A small puff of green smoke came out of its nose. "Hello," said Emilio, because he had been raised to be polite even in unexpected situations. "Hello," said the dragon. Its voice was surprisingly soft, like a cello playing underwater. "Could you perhaps help me? I seem to have gotten my wing caught in your kite string." Emilio looked. Sure enough, his kite string was wrapped twice around the dragon's left wing. The golden kite itself was perched on top of the dragon's head like a very shiny hat, fluttering in the breeze. Despite everything, the shock, the impossibility, the fact that he was standing 6 feet from a creature most people believed did not exist, Emilio laughed. He couldn't help it. The dragon, with the golden kite on its head, looked genuinely quite funny. "I'm sorry for laughing," he said, already moving forward. "Let me untangle you. My name is Emilio." "I am Zephyr," said the dragon. And then, more quietly, "Thank you for not running away." Untangling a dragon from kite string turned out to be a more complicated job than it sounds. Zephyr's wing was enormous, even folded. It was nearly as wide as Emilio's bedroom, and the string had wrapped itself around several of the thin wing bones in a knot that would have impressed a sailor. Emilio worked carefully, his fingers nimble from years of kite building, and Zephyr held very still, occasionally letting out little huffs of green smoke when a section of string pulled too tight. While he worked, they talked. Zephyr, it turned out, was not at all what Emilio had expected a dragon to be. He was young, about as young as a dragon could be while still counting as properly grown up, and he was deeply, thoroughly embarrassed about the kite string incident. He explained that he had been flying through the upper winds, the really fast ones, up above the clouds, where it's brilliant fun, when a sudden gust had thrown him sideways, directly into Emilio's kite string. "I'm not usually clumsy," Zephyr said, in the tone of someone who feared they might be, in fact, quite clumsy. "Don't worry," said Emilio. "I flew my potato kite into old Mr. Henshaw's chimney 3 times in 1 week. We all have off days." "Your potato kite? I'll show you later." Once the last loop of string was free, Zephyr stretched his wing carefully. It spread wide against the afternoon sky, 10 feet from tip to tip, the color of deep water, veined with threads of gold like a leaf in autumn. He flexed it once, twice, then winced. "Is it hurt?" Emilio asked. "A little," Zephyr admitted. "A wing sprain. I won't be able to fly until tomorrow at the earliest." He looked down at Emilio with those great amber eyes, and for a moment the young dragon looked exactly like a very large, very worried dog. "I don't suppose I could stay here tonight? Just until my wing mends." This was, Emilio knew, an unusual request. His mother would almost certainly have opinions about it. The whole village would definitely have opinions about it. But looking at Zephyr, who was trying very hard to appear dignified and was not quite managing it, Emilio made the decision instantly. "There's a big cave at the back of the hill," he said. "No one goes there except me. You can stay as long as you need." Zephyr's eyes lit up like 2 small suns. "Truly? Truly? Come on, I know a path the sheep use. It's hidden. No one will see us." They made their way along the hidden sheep path as the sun turned red and sank behind the mountains. Emilio walked, the golden kite tucked under his arm. Zephyr followed, stepping carefully, his tail creating a long winding trail in the grass behind him. "Can I ask you something?" said Zephyr. "Yes." "That kite. The golden one. Where did you get the paper?" Emilio glanced down at it. In the evening light, the paper seemed to glow from inside, as if a tiny fire were trapped within it. "My grandmother's attic. An old chest." "Why?" Zephyr was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Because that paper is sunweave. It only comes from one place in the world. The Ember Nest, at the top of the Fire Mountains on the other side of the Greywood Forest." He paused. "It's dragon paper, Emilio. It was made by us." Emilio looked at the kite in his arms. It glowed softly in the dusk, warm as a heartbeat. "Then how did it end up in my grandmother's attic?" he asked. "That," said Zephyr, "is an excellent question." They had reached the cave. It was wide and dry, its floor covered in soft mossy earth, its ceiling high enough for Zephyr to stand without ducking. Emilio had kept a lantern there for years, and a small stack of books, and a blanket he used when he wanted to read without being interrupted. It felt like the most natural thing in the world to share it. Zephyr curled himself into the corner, tail around his nose, wings folded neatly, and was asleep within minutes. Emilio sat by the entrance, the golden kite across his knees, and looked out at the first stars appearing over the mountains. Dragon paper, he thought. Made by dragons. In his grandmother's attic. He had a feeling that by tomorrow morning, his life would be entirely different from before. The next morning, Emilio did 2 things before breakfast. First, he brought Zephyr a bucket of water, a large pile of berries from the hillside bushes, and 3 cold baked potatoes he found in the kitchen. Zephyr ate them all in one mouthful and said they were delicious, which made Emilio feel rather pleased. Second, he went to find his grandmother. Nana Rosa was in the garden, as she usually was at that hour, sitting in her old wooden chair with a cup of tea and a cat on her lap and a look on her face that suggested she already knew something interesting was about to happen. Nana Rosa always had that look. It could be unnerving. Emilio sat on the garden wall and held up the golden kite. "Nana," he said, "where did this paper come from?" Nana Rosa took a long sip of her tea. The cat adjusted itself on her lap. A robin sang in the apple tree. Finally she said, "Ah, I've been wondering when you'd ask me that." "It's called sunweave," said Emilio. "It's dragon paper." Nana Rosa looked at him sharply. "And who told you that?" "A dragon." Another long pause. Then Nana Rosa laughed, a real, warm, crinkly laugh that made the robin stop singing in surprise. "Well," she said, "I suppose it was only a matter of time. Come and sit properly, Child. This is a long story. And so Emilio learned the secret his family had kept for 4 generations. His great-great-grandmother, a woman named Isolde, had been a kite maker too, the finest in all of Solara. 60 years ago, she had ventured into the greywood forest to find rare wood for her kite spines, and there she had met a dragon, an old dragon, silver-scaled, with a broken claw, who was tangled in a hunter's net. She had freed the dragon, at great personal risk, and the dragon had been so grateful that it had given her a gift, a sheet of sun weave, the most precious paper in the dragon world, woven by the eldest dragons from golden silk moss and moonlight. Use it for something you love, the dragon had said, and pass it on. Isolde had kept it safely, not knowing quite what to do with something so precious. She had passed it to her daughter, who had passed it to her daughter, who had passed it to Nana Rosa, who had tucked it away in the old chest, waiting. Waiting for what? Said Emilio. For you, said Nana Rosa simply. I always knew it would be you. You're the only one in our family who ever loved kites the way Isolde did. And I always thought. She paused, turning her teacup in her hands. I always thought the paper was trying to get back home. I just didn't know how. Emilio thought of the way the paper glowed. He thought of the way the kite always flew a little wilder, a little higher, a little more alive than any of his others. He thought of Zephyr saying, "That paper is dragon paper," in a voice that was strangely sad. Nana, he said slowly, what happens to a piece of sun weave that's been away from the Dragon Mountains for too long? Nana Rosa's face was very still. According to what the old dragon told Isolde, she said quietly, sun weave loses its light. Slowly. Over years. And when the light goes out completely. She paused. The dragon who wove it loses something too. A piece of their fire. Their strength. It fades like a distant echo. Emilio stood up very fast. He looked at the golden kite. Even now, in the morning light, he could see it. It needs to go home, he said. Yes, said Nana Rosa. Then I have to take it there. Yes, said Nana Rosa again. She did not look surprised. She did not tell him it was too dangerous, or too far, or too impossible. She simply stood up, set the cat gently on the garden wall, and said, I'll pack you some food. Wear your good boots, the ones that actually fit. By midday, Emilio and Zephyr were on the move. Zephyr's wing, though not yet strong enough for long flight, could manage short hops and glides. He moved mostly on the ground, his 4 great feet picking their way along the forest path, his tail carving a slow furrow through the fallen leaves. Emilio walked beside him, the golden kite strapped carefully to his back, his grandmother's food pack over one shoulder and his kite string reel clipped to his belt, old habits. The greywood forest began where the mountain village ended, pressing in from the west like a wall of ancient trees. These were the oldest trees in Solara, oaks and ash trees and silver birches so tall their tops disappeared into the cloud, their trunks wider than 4 men standing with arms spread. Moss covered everything, rocks, roots, the fallen bodies of trees that had died so long ago they were soft and ferny. The light inside the forest was green and shifting and beautiful, and the silence was so deep you could hear your own heartbeat. I've always loved this forest, said Zephyr, looking around with his great amber eyes. Even the dark parts. It smells of time. I've never been this deep before, admitted Emilio. Don't worry. I know the way. I've flown over it hundreds of times. A pause. Flying over is somewhat different from walking through. How different? Some of the paths are a little confusing. This turned out to be an understatement. The greywood had a habit of rearranging itself. Paths that looked straight turned in long unhurried curves. Streams appeared where there had been none, and disappeared when you tried to cross them. Twice they found themselves back where they had started, staring at the same mossy stump with the same cluster of red mushrooms that they had definitely passed 20 minutes ago. The forest does this on purpose, said Zephyr, who was trying not to sound worried and not quite succeeding. It likes to test people. Test them for what? Patience, mostly. Emilio sat down on a root and thought for a moment. Then he reached into his pack and pulled out his kite string reel. He tied one end to a tree root, stood up, and kept the reel in his hand. What are you doing? Asked Zephyr. Making a trail, said Emilio. Like a kite string. So we always know where we came from and which way we've been. If the forest is trying to loop us back, at least we'll know when it's doing it. Zephyr stared at him for a long moment. "That," he said, "is extremely clever." "Kite flying teaches you about paths," said Emilio simply. The string worked beautifully. 3 times the forest tried to double them back, and each time Emilio felt the telltale gentle tug, as if the string itself was alerting him, and they changed direction. By late afternoon they had reached the forest heart, a great circular clearing where the trees stood back and the sky opened wide overhead, and in the middle of the clearing stood the strangest tree Emilio had ever seen. It was enormous, older than old, its bark twisted into shapes that almost looked like faces. Its branches spread in every direction, hung with long curtains of silver moss. And at its base, sitting very still, were 3 foxes, large, silver-furred, with eyes the color of polished copper. They looked at Emilio and Zephyr without moving. "Forest guardians," murmured Zephyr quietly. "Don't panic. Let me handle this." He stepped forward and lowered his head in a slow, formal bow, the kind that involved his entire neck. The foxes watched. Then, after a moment, all 3 bowed back. The largest fox, the one in the middle, spoke, in a voice like dry leaves rustling, "A dragon and a kite maker. We have not seen such a pairing in 60 years. Its copper eyes moved to Emilio. "You carry Sunweave." "Yes," said Emilio. "We are taking it home." The fox was quiet for a moment. Then it stepped aside and, with one sweep of its silver tail, cleared a new path through the undergrowth, straight, clear, and leading directly east toward the distant peak of the Fire Mountains, which could just be seen glowing red-orange through the darkening trees. "The forest thanks you," said the fox. "When the sunweave fades, the old magic weakens everywhere. The trees feel it too." Emilio had not known that. He held the kite a little closer to his chest and walked faster. The Fire Mountains were not on fire, at least, not exactly. But they glowed. From their peaks rose thin columns of orange light, and the rock itself seemed to pulse with a warmth you could feel even from a distance, a deep comfortable heat like standing near a good fireplace. As Emilio and Zephyr climbed the lower slopes in the blue-grey light of early evening, the stone underfoot was warm through the soles of Emilio's boots, and the air smelled of minerals and something sweeter, like warm honey mixed with wood smoke and old stone. "I've missed this," said Zephyr softly. "I didn't realize how much until now." "Is your family here?" Emilio asked. "My mother and my uncle. They'll be worried. I've been gone since yesterday morning." He glanced sideways at Emilio. "They're going to be surprised to see me arrive with a human." "Should I be worried about that?" "No. My mother is. She's a lot like your grandmother." Emilio found this comforting. The path up the Fire Mountains was steep and wound back and forth across the orange rock face. As they climbed, Emilio noticed more and more small lights in the stone, flickers and pulses of golden amber and deep red, like a heartbeat inside the mountain itself. The golden kite, strapped to his back, felt warmer than before. It was humming. A tiny, barely audible sound, like a single note played on a violin from a great distance. "Zephyr, can you hear that?" Zephyr stopped. Listened. His eyes went wide. "The sunweave," he breathed. "It can feel the mountains. It's recognizing home." The hum grew a little louder as they climbed higher. And the patches of dull cream at the edges of the paper, Emilio could have sworn they were shrinking, the gold creeping back into them, as if the paper was slowly warming from the inside out. They reached the ember nest just as the stars came out. It was a vast hollow in the mountainside, open to the sky, its walls of black volcanic rock lined with thousands of tiny glowing crystals that cast the whole space in warm amber light. The floor was covered in some kind of soft, deep-colored moss, dark red and gold, that seemed to breathe gently. And perched around the edges of the nest, some sleeping, some watching with calm bright eyes, were dragons. 8 of them. All sizes, all shades of green and gold and deep river blue. A large emerald green dragon, older than Zephyr, with eyes the color of clear amber, unfolded from a resting position and crossed the nest with quick, elegant steps. She looked at Zephyr for one long moment, then folded her neck around him in what was unmistakably a hug. "You were gone all night," she said. "I know, I'm sorry, I got my wing caught in." "His kite string," she said, drawing back and looking at Emilio with calm, direct amber eyes. "I know. I've been watching." A pause. "Hello, kite maker. My name is Sarah. I am Zephyr's mother." "Hello," said Emilio. He thought of his grandmother's advice for meeting important strangers: be honest, be respectful, don't fidget, and managed all three.
I'm Emilio.
My great-great-grandmother was a soldier. An old silver dragon gave her a piece of sunweave 60 years ago. I made it into a kite. He slipped the kite from his back and held it out. I've come to return it. Silence fell over the ember nest. All the dragons were awake now, watching. The kite's hum was clearly audible, a warm, clear sound that seemed to vibrate in the walls of the nest. In the glow of the crystals, the golden kite was brilliant, more brilliant than Emilio had ever seen it, every inch of the paper blazing with warm light. Sarah reached out one great claw and very gently touched the edge of the kite. She closed her eyes. For a long moment she was perfectly still. When she opened her eyes again, they were bright with something Emilio recognized as the same thing he felt when his kites flew perfectly. Pure, uncomplicated joy. This sun weave was woven by my grandmother, she said quietly. The old silver dragon who gave it to Isolde, that was her. She died 15 years ago, but this piece of her still carries her light. She looked at Emilio steadily. You have brought home something we thought was lost. You cannot know what that means to us. Emilio held the kite out further. Then take it. It belongs here. But Sarah did not take it. Instead she looked at it thoughtfully for a long moment, then looked back at Emilio. No, she said. I don't think so.
Emilio blinked.
Sorry. Sunweave does not work by possession, she said. It works by love. My grandmother chose to give it to someone who would love it. And you, she tilted her head slightly, you love it very much. I can see it in the way you hold it. The way you've carried it all this way. She folded her claws back. Sunweave should stay with the one who loves it best. That is its nature. But it fades away from the mountains, said Emilio. It was losing its light. It was, said Sarah. Because it needed to come home, not to stay, but to be renewed. To be relit. She smiled, and dragon smiles, Emilio now knew, were absolutely unmistakable. A warmth, a brightness, a slight tilting of all the golden light in the eyes. If you will allow me, I would like to reweave it for you. To put back what it has lost, and perhaps a little more besides. Glowing star. What happened next was the most extraordinary thing Emilio had ever seen, and he had now seen quite a lot of extraordinary things in the past 36 hours. Sarah took the golden kite gently in both claws and carried it to the center of the ember nest, where the moss glowed deepest and the crystal light was strongest. The other dragons arranged themselves in a wide circle, sitting very still, their eyes half closed. Zephyr sat beside Emilio at the edge of the nest, his wing pressed lightly against Emilio's shoulder, warm, solid, comforting. Sarah breathed on the kite. Not fire, not the burning, roaring kind. This was something softer and stranger, a long, slow exhale of golden light, like a sunrise compressed into a single breath. It poured over the kite paper like warm water over cool stone, and where it touched, the paper blazed. Not with a harsh glare but with the deep, steady, living warmth of a candle flame seen through cup hands. The other dragons breathed too, one by one around the circle, each adding their light to the kite's paper, each color slightly different. The deep amber of Zephyr's mother, the cool green gold of an older dragon by the far wall, the pale silver of a very young dragon who peeked out shyly from behind its parent before adding a tiny thread of light. The hum grew and grew until Emilio could feel it in his teeth, in his chest, in the soles of his feet through the warm stone floor. And then, gently, it softened. The light settled. The hum faded to a whisper, then to silence. Sarah crossed the nest and held the kite out to Emilio. He took it in both hands and nearly gasped. It was warm, really warm, genuinely warm, like a fresh loaf of bread straight from the oven. And it shone. Every inch of the paper was alive with light, not the bright flat gold of before but something richer and deeper, gold threaded with amber, with green, with silver, with pale dawn pink, every color that had gone into the breathing circle, woven together in the paper as if they had always been there. It will not fade again, said Sarah. Not for 100 years at least. And when it does need renewing, it will find its own way to us, or you will bring it, or whoever loves it next will bring it. She looked at the kite in his hands with unmistakable fondness. That is the nature of things that are loved properly. They find their way home when they need to. Emilio thought of his grandmother, tucking the paper away in the old chest. Waiting. He thought of his great-great-grandmother Isolde, freeing a silver dragon from a hunter's net in the dark of the greywood. He thought of the long chain of caring hands the paper had passed through. "Thank you," he said. The words felt too small, but he meant them with everything he had. "Thank you," said Sarah, "for bringing it home." They stayed in the ember nest that night, Emilio curled in his cloak on the warm red moss, the kite resting beside him, the gentle breathing of the dragons all around him like a lullaby. He slept better than he ever had, dreamlessly and deeply, while the crystals glowed and the stars wheeled overhead. In the morning, Zephyr flew him home. His wing had healed overnight, a thing that, Zephyr explained, happened much faster in the warmth of the ember nest, and the flight was everything a first flight on a dragon should be, terrifying and wonderful in equal measure, the mountains spread below like a rumpled green and gold blanket, the wind enormous and clean in Emilio's face, his heart going about twice its normal speed and his whole self singing with the sheer impossible joy of it. They landed in the meadow below the flat rock where the kite string had first tangled them together. Emilio slid from Zephyr's back on slightly wobbly legs and stood in the morning grass, the golden kite under his arm. "Will I see you again?" he asked. "Often," said Zephyr, with complete certainty. "I fly this way regularly. And now I have a reason to stop properly instead of crashing into things." He paused. "I meant what I said last night, you know. About wanting to learn. To make one. A kite."
Emilio grinned.
"You want me to teach you to make a kite? Is that strange?" "A little," said Emilio. "But strange things seem to be my specialty lately." He held out his hand. After a moment's consideration, Zephyr lowered his great head and gently bumped it against Emilio's open palm, the dragon version, apparently, of a handshake. "Next week, then," said Zephyr. "Same rock." "Next week," said Emilio. He climbed the hill and stood on his flat rock and watched Zephyr rise into the morning sky, wings spread wide, catching the high wind with the easy grace of someone who had always known how to fly. He watched until the dragon was a small glittering shape against the clouds, and then he unrolled the golden kite and set it loose. It rose immediately, faster than it had ever risen before, eager, alive. In the morning sun it blazed with every color of the night's breathing circle, gold and amber and silver and dawn pink, every thread of dragon light woven through it, glowing and permanent and full. Far above, just before he disappeared into the clouds, Zephyr rolled once, a wide, slow, happy roll, as if to say, "I see it. I see it shining."
Emilio laughed.
He stood on his rock above the village of Solara, the string in his hands, the kite blazing in the sky, the wind in his hair and the whole wide world spread around him, and he felt, perfectly, completely, extraordinarily, like himself.